So I kind of had to get the whole front rehung back on the car. So bash bar, rad support, radiator, and ultimately I was going to move my coolers out to the fog light ducts, and I decided against it. So ignore the fan that's on the oil cooler right now. That was going to be on there if it was moved out, but I just didn't have as much room as I wanted, and that's in kind of like a danger zone, so that if something does happen in that front corner, like things have happened in the past, it might end my day or be catastrophic in the sense that it could, you know, blow an oil line, power steering line, whatever. So you can't, it's not, I mean, it's right here, but I designed some brackets for the intercooler, and they're getting cut. They're actually on the way from Send Cut Send. So the intercooler is going to sit down in this area, and it's going to be in the lower bumper. And once this is all mounted, I'm going to make air ducts on the insides and on the bottom, so that we're pulling air through the intercooler first, the fans, the factory fans, and we're also going to program the factory fans to come on even earlier than they were prior. Then I used to have a janky power steering cooler that kind of hung down here, so we're moving that up here. And what we're going to do, so I have a nicer bar plate intercooler, or bar plate cooler, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think it's like a 6 row, 6 or 7 row, whatever it is. But this is just a 10 a.m. step down to a 3/8 barb. That's the power steering. That's going to mount here. It's kind of just wedged in there right now. But I start running the hose because this one line, the hot line coming out of the rack, it's kind of harder to get to when the engine's in the car. So I'll show you that. And then we're going to keep our oil cooler in the same spot. We're going to modify these brackets to make them look a little nicer than previous. And that way we don't have to remake the Dash 10 AN lines. But looking up in here, this is the power steering hose that I mentioned that comes out of the rack. And then I have it snaked down and up through here. And then we have the 3D printed bracket that I made to move the power steering reservoir to the shock tower. So as you can see, this sits on the shock tower now, and I think we should be good. We'll know for sure once the engine's in the car, but I think we should be good as far as being able to still feed the pump and be at a downward angle on this 5/8 hose. That was the kind of the hard part that I came across. So we'll find out once the engine's in and the pump's installed that, you know, depending on where this sits, if we'll be good and we can get a piece of hose to be happy with the way it bends. And then I have the cold line. That's this line. It's going to come out of the power steering cooler there, route around. We wrapped it with some heat sleeve here, and then it comes up to the reservoir. So we'll try and keep our cool fluid cool and be good to go there. At some point, probably before this car sees the track again, I do want to add a filter. I don't know, it'll probably be easier for me to add the filter post cooler just for the sake of space, because that hot line kind of tucks down there and there's not a lot of room to play with. So I'm wondering if I did, like, we're gonna have the chilled line here, and if we did like a filter right in the middle here, that way it could be easy to access with all you gotta do is take the bumper off and you'll have clear access to it. So just one thing that I want to try and preserve the power steering pump in the car. Oil cooler, like I said, those lines, those are going to run down through here like normal. We do have a lot of extra space in here now because the ECU is going to sit up here. So those wires are all going to come this way instead of having to go down and under the frame rail and clutter that whole area up down there. Those wires are going to come up into here, and then once we know where they land, then we'll make some mounts for the ECU, because then our intake is going to go through there and come out right here. So with that being said, I also painted the back corner back here where the battery tray goes. It was pretty rough. The original battery that was in here was leaking and kind of just made a mess. So I pulled the whole battery tray, cabin air filter assembly, that whole corner out, painted it, cleaned it, prepped it, the whole nine, put it all back in. The battery tray isn't back in yet because still need to run a power wire from our little distribution block here that goes all the way to the trunk, because that is going to feed some relays for various things like our water pump for the supercharger and our fuel pump. So that's all that'll be a after the fact kind of thing. What else did we do? These fuel lines are gonna get ripped out. This is the evap line. This will stay for now. I don't really know what I'm doing yet as far as the evap system goes, but that'll stay for now. And yeah, otherwise everything is pretty much how it's gonna be. Before the engine goes in, these brake lines, these hard lines, I wanna measure the fittings on the brake master. And then while I already have, I hand bent these rear lines, and then we have the Stansco hard line to soft line adapter kit on here. So I know these fittings, but I need to figure out, these are larger fittings. I need to figure out the pitch of these fittings on the sides here, because I think I'm gonna convert these hard lines that snake around and snake up here and go to the master to soft lines as well, just to get them out of the way, because these hard lines, they kind of just get in the way. It's simple as that. So with a soft line, I'll be able to route it a little differently and have a little more flexibility. Literally with our routing, we'll be able to come up and kind of like snake it up through here and then keep it away from the heat of the engine, but also keep it away from, like, if I got to do spark plugs and things like that, where you're just busting your knuckles on hard lines. So otherwise, I need to pull this whole front end off again. That'll be no problem. We'll get that knocked out. And then we got to take the engine off of the stand. We got to put the new pilot bearing in, put the new clutch on, put the trans on, and then shove it on in there. So obviously with the LT4 Supercharger, there are some hurdles, some undocumented hurdles that we're gonna have to work our way around. So I've been doing some wiring adaptations and things like that. So this one that I have printed out is the pinout for the map sensors. This is a Gen 3 map sensor right here, and we're gonna have to go from the Gen 3 map sensor to a Gen 4. We're gonna run a CTS-V, second gen CTS-V map sensor. It's a 3-bar map that is on the LSA blower, and we're gonna bolt that guy right into there. So I ordered the plug. Once that arrives, I will do what we gotta do to make these work. But then another example of some wiring things is the mass airflow, the MAF sensor. So the LS2 mass airflow sensor is this style plug, smaller plug, still 5-pin, but we're gonna go LS7 MAF because this MAF has flow restrictions at a certain point. So in addition to that, we wanted to break out the intake air temp sensor, because we don't want to be measuring our intake air temp in the intake track, because that's pre-intercooler. We want to get that air temp as it's going through the intercoolers and into the engine, so we have an accurate reading. So we have the LS7. I ordered the LS7 OEM plug. We depinned the LS2 plug, and we pinned up our LS7 mass airflow sensor plug, and then we split the 2 intake air temp wires out here, and then we have 2-pin GT150 connectors right here, and they go to a mass airflow, a 3/8 MPT GM mass airflow sensor. Pretty generic deal here. So what I'm going to do is I can unplug these, and I'm going to make the center section, and that'll plug into each end once I know the proper length, because this mass airflow sensor needs to go in the post intercooler side of the supercharger. So I don't know if I'm going to, on the driver's side, not this side, if I'm going to try and get in here. No, this is all pre. I think I got to go back here. So we have our map sensor on this side, and I think I'm going to try and do the IAT like either in the side or in the back here, and we'll drill, we'll tap the threads, and we'll screw it in. So there's a lot of like funky things that we have going on. I also had to get some extensions for our coil pack, so we're gonna route these however we can. I still need to figure out this is the map plug. So this is the one that's gonna get modified. And then we have some wiring adapters like our cam sensor. This is our cam sensor plug. This needs to go to the new LS2 cam sensor, which is right in here. So that's got to wrap around the front of the engine. And then we have our knock sensors. So we're converting from the Gen 3 style to the Gen 4 style knock sensors, because this LS2 has the Gen 4 style knock sensors. So these little adapter harnesses, it's basically the same single line. It plugs in to the factory knock sensor location, but then you got to ground this out. So I'd imagine we're just going to ground it out on the sensor itself. We'll orient that again once it's in the car. So this is kind of where we're at. I have the whole wire harness here. I tested taped it all, and then for the sections that are sitting, like literally laying on the engine, or the sections that are gonna be underneath the supercharger, I wrapped them in some additional heat shield just to help not let them melt. I don't know. But it's gonna be a tight fit under here. Okay, so now we have the engine up, the LS2 in the air here. We slide around here. And I realized that the pilot bearing was actually still in this engine. This is from a GTO. GTOs use the smaller bore pilot bearing that kind of sits on the second lip in on the crank, and it's like a needle bearing. And then the CTS-V, LS2, and LS6 runs the larger bore LS pilot bearing. So mainly the determining factor of which pilot bearing you run is dependent on the T56 that is in your car, or the transmission that's in your car. So I went out and rented the tool this morning, so that was kind of my halting point last night, but I need to pull this small bore pilot bearing out. We're gonna tap in our new pilot bearing, and then we'll be good to install the clutch on this thing, then trans, and get it all in the car. So the pilot bearing tool that I opted for today is this guy right here. Basically goes in, I had to unscrew it. It goes into the pilot bearing. This fork presses on the crank, and then it should theoretically pull it out pretty easily. All right, guys, things were looking bleak for a minute there, but we finally got it moving, and I'll show you what I had to end up doing. Honestly, if it didn't work this time around, I don't really know what I would have done, but here we are. And we got ourselves a small bore LS pilot bearing. Ooh, removed. She was in there. That is for sure. So you can see here in the crank that you have your like steps here. So the small bore pilot bearing goes into that main step there, but then our large bore sits out here. Now, you don't want to do the whole like, let's shove bread in it and it'll press out on its own. It's not going to work. But also, see that freeze plug right there? Now that's a lot of PB blister. It's puddled in there. It's not oil, but that's a freeze plug. And if you shove enough bread in there, you can push that plug in and you will have oil leaking out of the backside of your crank. You don't want to be in that position. So use a puller and make it work however you need to make it work, kind of similar how I just did. So I modified the puller here to make these guys. I shaved this to be a little thinner, the shaft part, and then I kind of made these more closer to a 90-degree angle, and it wasn't grabbing. So this is the backside of the pilot bearing. It just kept slipping and pulling the lip, I guess the race for the needle bearings. Well, eventually it broke apart the entire cage for the needle bearings. So I was able to use a pick. I pulled the cage out, and then I used a magnet and I got all the needle bearings out. So then this was just a hollow cage here. So then I put the puller back in. It slipped off the back edge again, but it caught that front edge all the way down in there, and it pulled it out. I also sprayed it with PB Blaster very liberally. So we have ourselves a crank with no pilot bearing in it. I was worried. I was worried that I was about to, once I gutted it, I was like, well, I guess there's no harm in leaving this in the crank, since the larger bore bearing, you know, sits in here and the trans theoretically wouldn't touch it if that was still in the crank. But yeah, glad we don't have to get janky with it, especially because to get to this, you need to pull the trans. So this is something that I don't want to have to deal with anytime soon. So now I'm gonna unbox my clutch stuff, and oh, I'm also gonna tap so this is one of the spacers for the Stansco lower control arms. That works out perfectly for tapping in the new bearing. So we're gonna tap the new bearing in, I'm gonna clean this out, and then we'll keep on moving to the clutch stuff. So we have a brand new NTK. I mentioned in the last videos, I'm running an eBay clutch, which is the same clutch I ran before, but I get not NTK, I get a new OEM NSK bearing. This little control arm spacer that I have laying around is the perfect size. So I'm going to line the bearing up. It's not a tight press fit. So it should tap right in. I say that, but will that happen? Oh yeah, looks like it will happen. Cool. Pressure plate bolted up to the flywheel with our clutch disc in the middle, and our check for proper alignment is that our tool moves in and out nice and easy. It doesn't take a lot to, yank it out, but it slides through the clutch disc and our pilot bearing with ease, which is what you want. Now it's time to put the trans on the engine for the final time, hopefully, fingers crossed. And then once that's hung, we're gonna put a new slave cylinder on the trans, but once that's all hung, we're gonna drape the harness over top of the trans, plug everything in, tie everything up nice. That way we could just drop all this into the car in one package and not have to worry about running as many wires as we would. I mean, we're gonna have some wires to run back here and whatnot. Still gotta figure out our map sensor situation, but like we have the harness, the extension harness for our cam sensor. Our grounds go to the bolts that are currently being used to hold the engine up, and just some assorted things. But we're gonna have plenty of room until the supercharger goes on. So the superchargers, that's gonna be the last thing that goes on once this thing's in the car, because we're gonna enjoy the space that we have in the meantime to get everything wrapped up. So I'm gonna move this out somewhere and put the trans on, and I'll check in with you after that, because that is not very exciting. All right, guys, so after a lot of fighting, Morgan was out here helping me. It took us about 2 hours. We finally got the engine and the transmission dropped into the car. I still need to do the cross member on the trans, but we made a lot of really good progress here. So let me show you what we're looking at here. So also figured out, if you remove the hood strut from a V hood and you take the wiper cowl off, the hood will stand straight up. That is a nice feature. So here we are. We have an LS2. I had the LT4-Supercharger on here earlier, but today my injectors got delivered. So I'm basically looking to see, one, I'm installing the injectors into the Holley fuel rails. As you can see, they're installed here. I'll show you the injectors in a sec, the other ones. I had kind of had to loosen everything up. Fitment of the fuel rails to this plate and everything was snug. just a little too snug, but we got it in, the injectors are in. My concern is clearance. So you can see here, these are EV6 injectors and these are EV1 plugs, and they're the old style plugs. And on the LS2 injectors that I was running on this car before, I had these adapters. So I'm reusing the adapters at the moment, and I need to see if that'll create an interference issue with the electrical plugs and the supercharger once everything is in place. I'm not so much worried about this side. This side might clear, especially if you like kind of rack the injector, you know, towards the side. It's more so this side just because I have all this harness and all that, but we'll see. If it works, I'm gonna keep using these injector adapters. They worked fine for me. If not, I'm gonna have to basically depin these, repin each individual wire with the proper EV6 plugs, and then pin EV6 plugs to plug into the injectors. So I'm gonna do this side and then figure it out. Now, before I get too ahead of myself here, initial comments, concerns. So this hose right here is for the water pump that goes to the expansion tank. So that's that. I got a 5/8 hose for my relocated power steering reservoir, and just due to the firmness of this hose, it kinked here. So I ordered some pre-molded hose so that we're gonna see if I can get like a 45 in here and then have it kick out to here and not kink. So because that was just literally this straight hose. I also don't know how I feel about the weird like ribbed look on it. And yeah, so it's super stiff. Not gonna be using that. With the wiring moved to where it needs to be moved. So basically all this wiring used to sit out here on top of the outside the intake manifold. So I was a little concerned about length and things reaching when I moved everything on the inside here. Thankfully, everything matched up here where it needed to be. We got into the fuse box, we got plugged into the pack module and this other plug over here, and then we got these guys that plug in back here. On this side, we have alternator and coolant temp sensor plugged in down here. And then this harness runs up. We have our mass airflow harness that'll come out here by the intake, but then this guy plugs into the AC pressure switch fine, and then these two that go into the body, they basically land where they were before. These plugs were usually down here by the exhaust, and I've actually seen people melt these plugs. So back when I first built this car, I just flipped the harness up over top here over all this stuff, and while it's not the best looking, it really gets them out of the area of heat down there. So that's why I routed them up here. Then I ran a new hose for the coolant, or the whatever they're called, these guys, the steam ports. So we have the front steam ports that go to the radiator, and then I added rear steam ports back here. This is how it was set up on the old engine, but it comes out there, and I have it tee into the steam port line that goes into the expansion tank. So I put a new hose on there because the old one was super hard and crusty, but otherwise everything back here looks good. We got our clutch line hooked up right there, the new clutch master line, and we're gonna have to do our plumbing of the fuel system. We're gonna untangle some of these wires, but we have our dash 8 feed, and this is a dash 8 on the return, but I think I'm gonna keep the dash 8 to the fuel pressure regulator, and then off the fuel pressure regulator it'll be a dash 6. I think that's how I'm gonna do it. So we have plenty of room back in this area. The supercharger kind of only comes to like here. So I'm running this 45 that's gonna go to the return. I'm gonna run this 90 that's gonna be our feed right up here. So a concerning part, this is our adapter harness for the LS2 throttle body, but a concerning part is that I'm gonna need to do a loop here. Now these are two dash 8 loops. Dash 8 it's not small, it's 1/2 inch tube. And my concern is having space to loop this around. Now I got the same 90-degree RB fittings that I have back here for here, but the problem is when those 90-degree fittings were facing each other, they were almost touching, because this is a lot closer than your traditional LS setup where the injectors are out here and you have enough room to make a nice loop. So I need to think about what I'm gonna do for this loop section right here. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. Part of me is also considering buying the necessary flaring tools and whatnot and doing like an ORB to -8, you know, just straight adapter fitting, but then flaring a hard line and basically just making a C-shaped hard line that will come out here or, you know, bend out here wherever it needs to bend, and then just flare the fittings that will go onto there, because it's going to be difficult to do a soft line that's not going to want to kink. That's the biggest part. So, or I'll go to a local hydraulic shop and see if they can make me a fuel line that will fit. So I don't know, we have some thinking to do about this crossover line from the front fuel rail to the back fuel rail. Otherwise, down here with the larger LSA pulley on, I had to clock my front driver side brake line. Now I run the Stansco hardline delete kit. So basically it converts what was hard lines for the fronts to soft lines, to stainless steel braided soft lines. So I was able to just loosen up this fitting right here and clock it as far as I could this way. These are just some NICOP lines I bent that go to the back of the car because the old ones are rusted. And yeah, these are the Stansco lines that have been on the car for like 3 years now, and they run out to the wheel wells. And I'll show you guys a new part that actually came in the other day. AC compressor is going to go back in here. We have our stock alternator, stock power steering pump, and we have our LSA or LS3 water pump that has the lower inlet. And then we have our OEM factory LSA idlers, tensioner, and all that stuff. Our tensioner is hitting the wiring over here, so we're gonna have to make sure we zip tie this stuff back pretty good and just keep an eye on it once she runs. And then we got our new Bono Specialties purple hose down here. Unfortunately, we're not gonna be able to run the V1 hose because it usually goes right here, but we will we'll modify, we'll make something work otherwise. I think there might be a solution from Bono coming for that, so just keep an eye out for that. But yeah, otherwise we have a LS2 in our previous LS6 car. So now that I've got all that explaining done, let's put some injectors in. I'm gonna set you guys up here. We're gonna lube up our injectors and we're gonna get them put in to the driver's side bank and see if all the holes line up and all that. And then we'll put our connectors on, and then we'll lay our supercharger on and see if we're making contact with the plugs on the injectors. All right, so we have our fuel rail here. Got the injectors all in place, and I have them all lubed up when I put them in, the top O-rings, and then we have our bottom O-rings lubed up with the lube that they supply. We're gonna come down in here. Just gonna try and line them up real nice. Take a look. This is how we are looking down in the valley. And this is what our clearance, like our height, looks like. So, guess we'll see. All right, so our supercharger is on, and the unfortunate scenario that we could have run into here, we were running into. So you could see, if you could see down in there, the connectors are hitting the underbelly of the supercharger to the point that it's not sitting flush on the adapter plates. So definitely a bummer, but I'm going to have to, I mean, if it's just the EV6, sorry, I'm blocking you guys. Definitely a bummer, but I'm definitely going to have to get EV6 pigtails and modify all 8 injectors. You know, just the height of just the EV6 portion, it'll be fine, but it doesn't have the space to do the EV6 to the EV1. But in other news, this is what the supercharger looks like in the engine bay here. This is that line I was talking about. That's going to run out here, go to the brake booster, and then we're going to have our inlet coming from our heat exchanger. That line's going to come down, go out between the radiator to the heat exchanger, and then this is going to be our outlet that goes back to the trunk tank. So this line is going to go out here, it's going to go down, go inside through, like, follow this line, and then it's going to go down under the car and to the trunk. So looks pretty sick. with this configuration. And yeah, so I'll pull the supercharger off. I'll go order some EV6 plugs, and we're gonna have yet some more wiring work to do. I feel like it's a ton to look at on camera, and it's a lot to take in, but the Drift V will be back again soon enough with a fresh look. We gotta swap some body panels on this thing. I gotta pull some things off the parts car. We have some test colors here. I already know what color I'm going with on the car, but it's hard not to get too excited, but you know, we still got a lot of work to do, and it's just gonna be plugging away one thing at a time as we work our way through it all. With that being said, thank you guys for watching and following along with the progress. I do post a lot on Instagram, so follow me on Instagram at Mike_Stansco. Follow Stansco.parts as well on Instagram for the V guys. I'm posting things we sell, the Stansco parts, other parts that we sell for the V1s. So keep an eye on that. And then with that being said, stay tuned for the next video. I don't know what it's gonna be. I'm gonna do this wiring work and get this injectors sorted out, and I know I'm already backed up on videos. I have the video before this I still have to edit and put out. So I'm gonna try and catch up on that. But otherwise, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for hitting the subscribe button. If you haven't, make sure you do it. I'll see you in the next one.